Hello and welcome back to Lunch Break Heroes. This time around, I'm bringing you a set of rollable tables chock full of horror encounters that you can drop right into your game. So here today, I'm going to read through a few of these and kind of riff off of them and build little quests out of them, and so you can see kind of what my creative process is and what you can do with these prompts. Right about now, you might be asking, hey, what about the adventure for this month? Where is that? Well, I'll tell you, it's not quite ready yet. We need to leave it in the oven for just a little bit longer to make sure it's ready, so we're gonna have it for you next month, I promise. Before we get on with that list, be sure to click subscribe if you haven't done so already, and click the bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. That being said, let's jump into it. Now, our first encounter brief is from the Supernatural Encounters table. This is a table full of, you guessed it, supernatural encounters dealing with ghosts and other incorporeal things that go bump in the night. Choose one character. Whenever they look in a mirror, they see dark humanoid shapes lurking behind their reflection. When they turn, the shapes are nowhere to be found. Now this is a creepy start to a good old-fashioned ghost story. Imagine one of your players walking into an inn, a place that they've never been to before, and they pass this big, tall, ornate mirror, and they look at themselves, and then suddenly they realize that they aren't the only one in the reflection. These dark shapes are looming over them. Are they friendly? Are they hostile? Do these forms need help? What drew the spirits to this character in the first place? These are all excellent questions to answer and really build this adventure out of this encounter brief. All right, next up for the Supernatural Encounters table. In an open field under the light of each full moon, two spectral armies clash against one another. Damned, they have reenacted their final hours over and over again for centuries. That is, until a spectral soldier catches sight of the characters. Now, I can just imagine that this ghostly battle is this thing that the locals have been watching happen over and over and over again for centuries, and it's just a thing that happens. They're like, oh yeah, they're going at it out in the fields again, and they don't care anymore. It's a tourist trap. But then the characters show up and all of that changes. The ghosts, their behavior begins to change. They notice the characters, they interact with them, and maybe the characters are their pathway to redemption for breaking the cycle. Before we get on to our next list, I want to point out you can get this and all of our other content over on Patreon for just as little as $1. That includes all of our adventures. You can get this and all of our other stuff in print-friendly format at our bronze tier for $1. For $2 at our silver tier, you can get full color PDFs to download and keep forever. And at $5, our gold tier, you can get a whole bunch more, especially with our adventures. You get your name in the credits of all of our printed material, and you also get NPC tokens and portraits to go along with the adventures. At our $10 platinum tier, you get access to all that other stuff, and you get the Foundry VTT modules for our adventures. So go ahead and check that out today. In addition to spectral encounters, we've got undead encounters. Now, what's the difference between undead and spectral? Well, undead is physical forms, zombies, ghouls, vampires, stuff like that, whereas spectral is all, incorporeal. First up on our undead encounters, we have, as characters travel down a dirt path, they see a skeletal hand sticking up from the middle of the path, as if reaching for the sky. When any characters draw near, the hand's finger twitches. If there's one thing you don't expect to move, it's a skeletal hand. Although you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, so I guess every skeleton you kind of expect to move. But what does this mean for your party? When this hand twitches, does it signal other skeletons to rise up from the ground? Are they about to be overrun by this undead mob? Or is this skeleton the ancient body of some sort of revenant that is looking for revenge or has some other goal that it needs the party to help them meet? Next up on the Undead Encounters list, a vampire torments her still living husband, who simply thinks that he is growing weak from lack of sleep due to nightmares of his late wife. This is why they started putting spikes through coffins. Seriously. People would get nightmares of their loved ones and then think that they rose up from the dead. It's a thing, or it was a thing. But in any case, this has all the makings of a very sad and tragic adventure. I mean, this elderly widower has his wife coming to torment him and drain him of his life force, and he thinks he's just not getting enough sleep. Now your party has to deal with it, break the reality to him, and get rid of his wife once and for all. Can he let go, or will he want to join her? Alright, let's turn our attention to some demonic and fiendish encounters. Demons and devils making deals and tormenting mortals just for the fun of it. These things are, they're not nice, but they do make for fantastic encounters. First up on our encounter list here, after a plague has turned it into a charnel house, a church has been abandoned. Reports say that a demon has made its lair there and that it animates the church statues to blaspheme and kill after sunset. Now, if you haven't read the book Between Two Fires, I highly recommend you go out and do it right now. Seriously, just exit the video and go get the book. But if you have, this probably sounds a little familiar, and I'm gonna say I shamelessly kind of ripped it off. But it was such an interesting encounter idea for me that I had to share it with more people. So in Between Two Fires, the main character, spoilers by the way, the main characters enter into this town. And exactly this has happened. The plague has run rampant. A church was basically a sick bay, but everybody there died and the place has become corrupted. Now the statues are running amok, controlled by these malevolent forces. Now, unlike in the book, your party has the power to do something about this. Can they defeat these statues? Can they drive out the darkness from this church and bring salvation back to this town? I think they can. Next up, a family is being harassed by a man who wants to purchase their land. His offer is generous, but the family doesn't want to sell. Now bad things are happening and they think he is responsible. The family feels that the man is more than he seems and say he stinks of sulfur when he becomes agitated. Now this guy is obviously a devil of some sort. He wants the family's land to, enact further evil, but he can't do it for whatever reason. This universe land ownership maybe prevents him from doing that, and so he wants to buy the land from these people. But they don't want to sell, obviously, and he's really PO'd about that, and he's about to bring out the big guns, but your party steps in and they prevent it. Or maybe he steps back and brings in further reinforcements to make it a bad day for your party. This is prime cult territory for you to throw a bunch of faceless, hooded people at your party and see how they fare. Now, in addition to spectral and undead and devils and demons, we've got monsters. What would the horror genre be without just plain old monsters? First up on our monstrous encounters list, when a missing persons case takes the party to an opium den in the middle of a crowded city, they find the proprietor to be less than cooperative. But before they can extract any information, the junkies rise from their stupor as flesh-hungry monsters. Something is very wrong with the wares. Now this is just the start to a good old-fashioned knockdown, drag-out bloodbath. Your party faces off against a whole bunch of transformed, flesh-hungry opium monsters. I mean, what more could you want in a D&D session? Of course, once they're done with all these flesh-hungry monsters, there's the question of what happened to the opium to make them all into these monsters, and who's supplying it? Where else is it going? Who else is going to be turned into a monster? And can you stop it? Next up, what begins as a complaint of a few spiders gets out of hand when the local innkeeper is found dead, with baby spiders crawling out of their mouth and ears. A large spider has secretly been using the townsfolk as incubators, and the gestation period has come to an end. Alright, first off, ew, that's gross. And really creepy. Who doesn't think spiders are just a little creepy? I mean, even if you work with spiders professionally or keep them as pets, you gotta admit, ugh. And now, in addition to our natural aversion to these eight-legged things, we have the prospect of a very large spider, which is nothing new in the D&D world, let's face it. We all have faced off against giant spiders, but now it's putting its eggs inside of people while they sleep. That's just freaking gross. And now you're on a timer, because the longer your party takes to, fix this problem, the more people are just gonna go with all of these baby spiders. Now our final list of encounters deals with what I call creepy encounters. You see, not all horror encounters have to deal with something that has a threat to the body. Ghosts can possess you, ghouls can eat you, and monsters will tear you apart, but that isn't all there is to horror. Some things are just creepy. First up on our creepy encounters list, a child sobbing can be heard in the darkness of the forest, just beyond sight. Whenever characters draw near to the sound, it seems to go further into the shadows. Alright, dollars to donuts, that's not a child. What is it remains a complete mystery. Maybe it's not even a thing. Maybe it's a force that wants to lure the party into a place. A trap, perhaps, or maybe something else needs their help. Perhaps even this crying noise that draws them into the forest leads them to an entirely different realm, a different dimension. Heck, maybe that's how they get to Barovia. Because goodness knows there's enough crying children in Curse of Strahd for them to be heard throughout the dimensions. Next up, while traveling through the forest, characters come across a space of tall trees and clear ground. Hanging from the trees are wooden effigies in humanoid shapes. Upon close inspection, the effigies have faces, each one resembling a party member and contorted in pain. Alright, so we're rocking the Blair Witch vibe with this one. What does your party do when they come into an area and they see their own faces carved into these effigies, just looking like, what are they gonna do? Do they look for the witch or whatever has made these? Do they question, how do they get our likeness? Or does one of them say, they didn't get my nose right? Now last up on our creepy encounters list, at midnight, a merchant ship has arrived at port and dropped anchor. No one is on deck, and no one inside is responding to calls from the dock workers. Creepy old ship comes in at midnight, drops anchor, and nobody's on board. We're really channeling Dracula here. But, do your party find Dracula on board? Do they find nobody on board? Who brought this boat into port? Maybe it's a whole bunch of sailors that are sick and now lying catatonic inside the hold. And if so, are your party now infected? What's going on? This is an interesting mystery to kick off a short little adventure, and I would love to hear how your party handles it, what you did with it, this and all of the other ones that we have in this supplement.